In this video, we will be discussing the conclusions that we have come to within this project. As we've been able to prove, shifting to electric vehicles in the US would be quite effective in reducing greenhouse gas emissions in the long run. It is for this reason that we highly encourage the execution of legislation concerning this matter. Just as an example, in 2031, if half of the US cars sold now were 50% EV, only 1.3 billion metric tons of greenhouse gases would be emitted in 2031, as opposed to 1.5 billion if all the cars on the road were internal combustion engine cars in 2031. We can see this massive difference just in this little statistic that would happen in 10 years. Just imagine in 20 or 30 or 40 years. The only question now is, what about the feasibility of introducing this mass amount of EVs onto the US auto fleet?
In order to evaluate the feasibility of shifting into EVs, we need to take into consideration the fact that if we start introducing electric vehicles into the market, and assuming that 50% of the US car sales from now into 10 years into the future are electric vehicles, in 2031, 0.24% of the total US car fleet will be electric vehicles, which is indeed a small number. However, we need to take into consideration that in order to see a significant impact on the US car fleet being electrical vehicles, we will have to wait longer than a decade, because internal combustion engine vehicles already take such a huge amount of the actual US car fleet.
Hi, my name is Amanda,
Hi, my name is David.
and we are going to be discussing factors to consider if we are to make the switch to EVs. First of all, EVs are generally way more expensive to make than ICEs, and so that will be a huge factor, that price barrier. As well as the general public might not be as willing to buy a more expensive vehicle if they do not fully understand the impact ICEs have on the global environment. As well as to take into consideration that EVs create a lot more pollution to make initially, but in the long run they do end up being better for the environment than ICEs. So there might be more time to take to make the process of producing EVs more efficient and better for the environment.
Exactly, and also going off of that, if you remember the first graph of our part one, it's you can see clearly that the production of EVs just demands more CO2 and greenhouse gas emissions, just because what Amanda said about the actual mining of the minerals and everything that are needed to build the batteries, and also apart from the whole situation with EVs specifically, it's important to talk about just countries and within themselves, and also their community, the international community. So talking a little bit about countries, different countries might have different policies and practices in regards to fossil fuels and green energy, and some countries might even have those policies, but they will take time to adjust to them, and usually it's a 10, 15, or 20 year period, and that's something that we have to take into consideration. And also a lot of countries have different time frames to adjust to green energy and to this new reality of EVs, and that is very clear when we look now into the international community. So if you think about maybe the Paris Agreement, it makes it hard for the international community to adjust to this. For instance, the United States has jumped off of the agreement and now has expressed its willingness to get back in, but that obviously delays the process, and it's a very important factor to consider about this. So time here is really the essence, and that should be taking into consideration when thinking about reducing greenhouse gases emissions.
And with that, we'll bring it to Michael to wrap it up for a conclusion.
Greenhouse gas emissions caused by the U.S. auto fleet have far-ranging negative effects on both the environment and the humans that live within the Earth's environment. Greenhouse gases are released and trapped within the Earth's atmosphere and cause the climate beneath to be drastically altered. These alterations to the atmosphere cause many different effects. Some effects are on the environment. The biggest ones are natural disasters, which would include wildfires, drastic loss in food for certain populations due to natural disasters, and the rising sea level. There are also effects on human health, one of which is the respiratory problems that could be caused both for people with pre-existing conditions and those without pre-existing conditions. In conclusion, this video is really trying to explain how the effects of greenhouse gases are extremely important, and therefore legislation that is trying to prohibit greenhouse gas emissions as a result of the U.S. auto fleet need to be taken. Thank you for listening.
Yeah.